The O4Ls are out, and it looks like Skyzone has just one-upped Fatshark Attitude V6s. I reviewed the Fatshark Attitude V6s, it seems like a couple weeks ago on the channel, and we were explaining in that review that they are LCOS screens, they are liquid crystal displays, and they are made by Intel, but they are not really made anymore because they're super expensive to manufacture. So will they replace OLED? No, because OLED are cheaper and they are brighter, but honestly, between the two, if you're doing a comparison, it's hard to tell the difference. And I'm going to show you in this review, we're going to do a little bit of a comparison of both of the screens. We're going to turn on the quad, use my GoPro, and we're going to go back and forth from both of these screens. So I can show you Lcos and I can show you OLED. There's not that big of a difference, but what the biggest difference about this pair of goggles versus the Fatshark Attitude V6s is, well, number one, Skyzone DVR is just superior to anything Fatshark makes, and it seems they've been using a very similar cheap DVR for the past 5 years, and it seems like we're still in HDO2s. We still have that same sort of, it kind of looks a little bit muted and a little grainier compared to the Skyzone DVR. Skyzone DVR is very clear and bright and looks great. The colors are very saturated, so if you're looking for nice DVR, grab a pair of Skyzones. That's what most of the reviewers these days are using, is Skyzones. My daily driver goggles are the Skyzone 030s, and I've had those for, it seems like 3 years going on now. So I'm interested to try these out today for you guys. And I think the biggest difference here is in the specs. The specs, they did one up the Fatshark Attitude V6s. So if you're looking at the Fatshark Attitude V6s versus the O4Ls, and you're wondering which one should I get, well, the O4Ls are more expensive. Well, there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is that these have a larger focal adjustment. They are the same field of view at 39 degrees field of view, but the focal adjustment on these is -6 to +6. So guys that are wearing glasses, these are the same focal adjustment as the more expensive $500 plus O4Xs out there. So top tier goggles with very similar specs, but Lcos screens on there. So making these a little bit cheaper for you to buy, but with that same focal range. So, you know, if you wear glasses, these are a clear choice. Now, the Fatshark Attitude V6s have the focal range from -2 to +6. So, yeah, Skyzone has beat Fatshark out in the focal adjustment range, which is really, really good news for guys that wear glasses. And most of the guys I fly with out there, you guys are a bunch of old dudes, and yeah, a lot of you guys have glasses. So this pair of goggles is likely to work for you without having to have diopter inserts, like a lot of the Fatsharks need. So there is no inserts for diopters in here, so you can't have diopters made, but I'm pretty sure with that focal range that these will work for you if you do have glasses, and you don't have to wear your glasses when you're using these. So this is great. So binocular style goggle, they're the same exact resolution as the Attitude V6s. They are 1280 by 960, both the same Lcos screens, but exact same resolution. And these are looking pretty good. The screens are the right distance from my eyes, and the image quality on here looks great. And the image itself looks very big on the screen. So it looks like you're looking at a really large screen, and all of the OSD is in focus. And I've talked about that on Fatsharks before, that there are some blurry edges. Your eyes pupillary distance to be able to focus to the edge of the screen, it has to be adjusted exactly right in a pair of goggles. So if it's not, and it's the wrong distance from your pupil, then you're going to have some image blurring around the edges. And that's been some of the biggest complaint about Fatshark in the past 5 years. So they're still working to get that distance right, but it seems like Skyzone has like hit the nail on the head, starting out with the O20s, as far back as the O20s. So another great pair of goggles from Skyzone with steady view receiver included and some beginner antennas. I'm gonna put some links down below for better antennas. So if you order these, go ahead and get yourself the Foxeer Patch Echo antenna. I've talked about that before. It's like 8 dB and very, very high gain on those. And get yourself just a right-hand circular polarized antenna to pair up with that. And that would be the ultimate combo for freestyle. So let's go ahead now and let's test these out. We'll show you the DVR, show a little flying, And then we'll come back to the bench and we'll check these out on the bench and we'll give you a little bit of comparison between OLED and Lcos. Here we go. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take off with the O4Ls. And we're just using the stock antennas today because I just wanted you guys to see how the reception is in kind of a close-up setting with my Recon 4. I just reviewed this quad on the channel and it was a lot of fun to fly. Like 28 minutes flight time with a Lion. Full GPS and it is an analog quad, so it's perfect for today's test. And look at the DVR. The DVR looks great. Skyzones, if you're new to FPV, Skyzones have superior DVR to any other pair of analog goggles that I have tested on my channel in the past 7 years. So that's a lot to be said, and Skyzone has dramatically taken over the market in the last 3 years. Fatshark started out as the go-to pair of goggles, and still a lot of FPV racers do buy them for close-up 25 milliwatt racing in multi-GP. But you know, when we're doing freestyle, most of the freestyle guys are starting to buy Skyzones because they now have external module bays, and the O4Ls, like the O4Xs, have dual module bays, so that's really nice. You can start out with the steady view, you can add another steady view receiver on the left hand side of the goggles, and then you can have really solid penetration through trees and around bushes. Now in this backyard right here, there's some good canopy in between my goggles and these little stick antennas. So we're gonna fly down the back of the yard and I'm gonna show you how those work out with the reception. And this test is mostly for just, you know, general backyard flying. It's not a long range test or anything like that, but mostly just to show you how bright the colors are in the DVR and how nice the Skyzone DVR looks. And for years, most of us that have been flying FPV, we all know that this DVR is looking great, and in comparison it is better. There is a comparison, a direct comparison on my channel. If you want to go back and look at the Attitude V6 review, go back and watch that review in comparison to the O2s and the O2s from Skyzone. There's definitely a difference. The image is sharper in the DVR and the colors are brighter and I feel like more true to life. Whereas the Fatshark DVRs, they just look a little bit muted and a little more blurry. So what happens is your FPV camera on the view, it does end up looking a little bit nicer. So that's one thing to take home for this particular pair of goggles. The DVR is great. But flying them on the stock antennas in a backyard setting, they're acceptable. I think they're actually doing pretty good. Now I'm gonna fly down the very back of the yard with a whole bunch of trees in the way between me and the goggles. And there's some overhang there. And coming down the side of the yard now with that playground equipment in the way and more trees in the way, and there's a little bit of breakup, but I think the stock antennas they're just fine for you to start out with. But I would definitely upgrade to the Echo Patch antenna and that just a Lollipop 3 or something like that for a right hand circular polarized antenna just fine for me. And I've flown miles and miles out with that same combo without even using a ground station. You can get out 3 more miles or more just using your 5.8 goggles. It's kind of cool. If you're on an 800 milliwatt, you can get way out there. But these look great. So let's go ahead back into the studio now and let's take a look at both of these pairs of goggles on the bench, OLED, and we will compare them to the Lcos. Here we go. All right, guys, before we jump into the specs on both of these pairs of goggles, we have the O4Ls on this side. They are white, and my original O3Os over here on this side. These are OLED, and these are the Lycos monitor screens. So we're gonna just go zoom in now, and we're gonna go in a little closer on the OLEDs first. And the thing we wanna see is there like a big difference between the brightness the way that the screen looks, the sharpness and all of that. I've been using this pair of goggles for a couple years now, and I love my 030s. They're my daily drivers. They're just easy to use. There's no light leaks. It does not have an external module bay, so it has a built-in module. It does not have the new steady view module bay. The biggest reason that people will not get these right now is the fact that you can get a pair now with a module bay. So this is the 04Ls. They have steady view, and honestly, I don't see a big difference. I see a little difference as far as the graininess goes, and I think that these are a little less bright. You can also see flashing on the screen, which means that the refresh rate is a little lower on these versus the OLED screens. So that means that as the image is being fired to the screen, it's just, there's a little more black in between each frame. So a lower refresh rate versus the OLEDs. So these are firing out pretty fast on the refresh rate. So that's interesting to me for this review and this test, that the Lcos screens seem to be a little lower refresh rate. But I'll tell you, looking side to side, if I was to compare both of these side to side, just comparing these, I think that if you turn the brightness all the way up on the Lcos screens, that they are still very bright. These lenses don't appear to be as bright as OLED screens, but they're damn close. So again, to the naked eye, I don't think you're going to see a lot of difference. I think the biggest difference here is, well, they seem to be a little clearer. They make your FPV camera look fantastic. And I've seen this before with Skyzone. In comparison, for Skyzone Attitude V6s, these 030s look better on the screen. They look way less muddy. And that's the word I can use, muddy. The Fatshark Attitude V6s look muddy for the color, saturation, and sort of the softness of the image. So whereas these look nice and clear and sharp, the Skyzone goggles tend to look a little bit muddy and less sharp. You can see fine details in Skyzone goggles when you're looking at your FPV camera, and that's what you're looking for, is sharpness, nice saturation, and a bright screen. And that's what most people want. That's the general need of the crowd out there. We want to be able to see that scraggle coming at us in the trees. So if you can see that tree branch that doesn't have any leaves on it, then that's a win for a pair of FPV goggles. But there you go. There's Lcos versus LED. And I think there's some differences, but they are very slight. And I think the biggest difference is that you're going to get a little faster refresh rate. And when I back off of it a little bit, it doesn't show it quite as much, but you can still see it flashing there. So that is the difference, guys. Let's go ahead and take a little closer look at the 04L's specs. Here we go. All right, guys, welcome to the specs part of this review. And we're going to talk about some of the good stuff, and we're going to talk about some of the changes between the 030's version all the way up to the new 04L series. Now, this series has been updated to the new standard with the new OS. This has a completely different operating system than this one. The 030's have an older version, and they have the built-in module bay. So if you're like, well, these are OLED, I should get these instead of getting these. These are cheaper and they're OLEDs. Well, these are the newer updated ones. They have less buttons on top. They also have MOV format on here for the SD card, which is able to record on an SD card up to like 128 gigabyte card, versus this one, I can't get anything over 32 gigabyte working on these. Whenever I come out with a card on accident with 64 gigabyte card, I come home with no video. It shows that it's recording on the screen, and then when I get home, I have no video. So I've done reviews before and come home with no video, had to go back out and do it all over again. So these will accept an SD card, which most of my cards now are 64 gigabyte or bigger, and that's kind of how it is for everybody right now. But the aspect ratio on the 04Ls are also 4:3 or 16:9, which is great. And some people didn't like these because they were 16:9 only. But the biggest thing for me, the biggest takeaway for these versus the Attitude V6s is the fact that, yeah, the focal range on these -6 to +6 adjustable focus range, that's really, really good for guys that have glasses. And you have +2 to -6 for adjustable focus range on the Attitude V6s. So also a big difference between Skyzones versus Fatshark. And this is something that helps me in the field, and I think it'll help you too if you have your battery of choice in the field. This is just a 3S 2200 right here. This is an old E-flite battery. I used to keep one of these in my pocket. The Fatsharks come with the 2-up battery for 18650s, and it goes on the side of the goggles and plugs into the side. That has been the standard maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but those 18650 packs, they don't really last that long, and it's kind of a pain. So my go-to battery is usually a 3S 3000 milliamp battery. I also have a 2650 that I use, and this 2200 will last me all week long. One battery goes in my pocket, and the best thing about Skyzones is they include this cable that a lot of guys end up buying anyway if they have Fatsharks. You can buy these on Amazon and use them with just about any pair of goggles as long as the barrel connector fits your goggles. I've tried these with Fatsharks, and I think they do work with Fatsharks, but XT60 there, and you just put it in your pocket. So that's really great. I don't like all that extra weight on my head, and these last longer than the 18650s, and I can still charge these on my LiPo charger at home before I go out. And I have tons of these extra batteries laying around, so that's nice. But the biggest thing about this is the power range also is from like I believe it's 2S to 6S. Yeah, it's from 6.5 volts all the way up to 25.2 volts. And it also has a USB port on this pair of goggles. So you can power these from like a battery bank with a USB port on it. So you could come out and power these from a power bank. So that's actually super cool. I usually keep a couple power banks on me when I'm out and doing reviews in the field in case my phone starts dying. But 7 to 13 volt on the Fatshark Attitude V6s only allows you to do a 2 or 3S battery. So if you screw up and you grab a 4S 1300 and plug it in, your Skyzones your Fatsharks are going to be just obliterated. So you will fry them if you do that. So be super, super careful about that. The 04Ls, as far as I know, so far, guys, are coming in white. I don't see a whole bunch of different colors. You should be able to get some skins for them soon. They also come in at 267 grams, which is a little heavier than the original 030s. And I'm still getting used to the jog wheel here, but I like the recessed button that they did on these as well in comparison to the older ones. It has this sort of button that comes out. This looks a little nicer, and it has an LED around the whole thing. So when you turn them on, you can see that they're on. This old one doesn't show you, but the fan is also very powerful, and it's adjustable as well. It also has head tracking. So if you want to do head tracking, that means your little camera that looks left and right that you can pair up with these goggles, it will do that as well. I don't know that these support 3D. I know that they do 2D, but this pair also has dual module base. So you can start out with the steady view receiver, and this will get you started right here. These antennas are not the greatest, but the fact that it comes with steady view, you can upgrade it also to rapid fire if you want to. And you have an extra module bay over here. So you can do 2 modules with quadversity on here, which is pretty cool. So that means that you can run 4 antennas, 2 patches, and a right-hand circular polarized on both sides. And that's nice. They also come with 2 different face plates, which is cool because I have a smaller head. I'm kind of like a large Chinese person, I've said before. The original faceplate is a little large. If you have a bigger head, like Stu from UAV Futures, you're going to use this one. Most Americans have larger heads than most of the Chinese, but these are quite smaller, as you can see, and no light leaks coming in through there. So I was good flying these today. And they also come with the larger strap, which I like. Now, if you have a really big head, Stu did say that these were kind of tight on his head. I have them all the way out for my head, and you can also buy different straps, and I can put some links down below for some straps. But these fit perfect once I did stretch them all the way out. They're pretty much to the end right there. So one thing to think about. Fat straps are all most people are using these days. It's just much more comfortable than the thinner straps. And I'm happy to see that even like on this pair of goggles, I have fat strap with the 030. So that's nice. And I may have switched that out at some point, but I think that the 04Ls are a nice addition to the Skyzone line. And I felt like since this pair of goggles does have the steady view receiver, it has a larger focal adjustment range. The screens look good. They're not a huge difference between these and the 030s, for the exception of maybe the refresh rate on there. You can see there's a clear difference in the refresh rate. So over time, what that does for your eyes is it gives more stress to your eyes over long periods of time if you have a lower refresh rate, because your eyes are seeing more black frames. It's so fast that your eyes can't detect it. But I mean, if you're doing video editing, a lot of times what video editors want is a very high refresh rate monitor so that they have less fatigue. If you're video editing for 10 hours a day, like I used to do, that's very important. So most of the Macs out there have a very high refresh rate. So if you look at that screen right there, you can see, there's no weirdness going on right there. But this has the new UI on here. It has 10 languages. It has the same exact resolution as the Fatshark Attitude V6s, 1280 by 960, better DVR, larger focal range. So for the little bit of extra money that they're charging for these, I'm gonna say I think it's justifiable. They're just a nicer pair of goggles than the Attitude V6s, and I own both. So I wish I'd had a pair of the V6s here today to do that A and Bing with the GoPro, but mainly my concern was showing you the difference between OLED and Lycos, and that was today's big takeaway for you. So if you're on the fence about getting 030s or the 04Ls, I think that if you want an external module bay with the option to do one more module over here, then these are the ones to get with the new OS and much larger diopter range. So the new screens are great. They are different than the original screens. They're completely different. So I would leave it up to you guys. You can make some comments down below what you think of these goggles and the specs. I'll put the link down below. You can check them out, grab a pair, or just go over the specs yourself and see what you think. So hopefully this review taught you something and you found it useful for you. So please do subscribe on the channel, guys, and you will see more reviews coming up. Really, really awesome stuff coming up on the channel. I have some cool drones coming up. So stay tuned for more analog and DJI digital reviews. Guys, I'm Justin Davis. Take care, stay humble, and be kind out there to each other. The FPV is such a wonderful sport. I'll see you on the next one.